Welcome to Pop Culture Man Troll and PCMC. I am your host for today, Mr. Michael Bongiorno. Emilio Sparks is out on assignment. I think he's still watching WrestleMania. It's like 9 hours this year, or maybe it's 9 hours every year. I have no idea.
I went to WrestleMania when it was last at the Meadowlands.
How long was that?
I only got there for whatever it was, the 4 hours that it was.
God damn.
But my friends, they were there for the day. They
really?
went. Oh yeah, they tailgated. They did the whole day.
Yeah.
They were there, and that's probably what I'm going to be doing next year because it's coming back to the Meadowlands next year.
Okay. So you're a wrestling fan?
I'm a casual fan. I'll just sort of watch from the edges, and like when WrestleMania comes around, or if there's like a good pay-per-view that I can go to somebody's house and watch, or that B-dubs, maybe I'll drop by. I'm excited this year because I want to watch Charlotte Flair take on Asuka, my Empress of Tomorrow.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we're big fans of her on the show.
Asuka?
No, the other one.
Oh,
Ric Flair's Charlotte. Yeah,
yeah.
She's Ric Flair's daughter, right?
She's Ric Flair's daughter, and she
wrote a book with him.
Oh, I don't know if she wrote a book. Oh.
I think Emilio once picked it as his pick one week.
Oh, his book of the month?
Yeah. All right. This is Pop Culture Mantra, PCMC. You know, if you're listening to us right now, first of all, thank you. Secondly, I want you to do me a favor and share this podcast on your social networks. Share it with a friend. If you got your mom in the car with you, say, Mom, I think you'd like this. Of course, subscribe on either iTunes or Stitcher. Please rate and review. Give us 5 stars. Give us a beautiful little review ski. Pop Culture Man Children on Instagram. At Emilio Sparks on Twitter. I am here in the basement of Cool with my friend, someone I work with, filmmaker, artiste, and, of course, a fellow instructor of cinema studies, Mike Fischetti. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm glad you're finally here.
Me too. I am. First off, I love this den of cool.
A lot going on here, right? There's the plushie
so much
corner
going on here. I still can't get a porg. You have
really?
2 porgs, and I still can't get one.
I have another porg elsewhere that like moves around and stuff. I like the farthier.
The fall there, I have a story about that. I'll tell you later. But
oh no,
no,
that sounds seedy.
No. I just don't want to embarrass my fiance. It's fine.
Oh, okay. That's an ET from Universal Studios, I believe, from the 1990s. I'm going to say 95, maybe.
That's probably accurate. I'm a huge Disney theme park nerd. However, what that has done is leave a huge gap in my knowledge on Universal.
Oh, really?
I went to Universal. I've been to Universal twice in my life.
That's still a good amount. That's not bad. I mean, compared to how many times you've been to Disney,
which I don't even count. Like,
I
literally don't know. Like, I've never.
You don't know.
Yeah, like I've never really sat down and just said, all right, let's see. There was the trip in 92. There was 95, 96. Like, I could, if I really wanted to, I could probably sit down and figure it out.
Look at the books. Well, since I've known you, I think you've gone every year.
Since 2010, I've probably gone once a year.
Yeah.
On average.
And you go to Disney World, right?
Disney World, yeah.
Have you been to Disneyland?
I will be going for the first time in August.
Are you excited about that?
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah, I'm, because that's going to be more like a historical trip.
Yeah.
In a sense, because like Disneyland has all of that rich history. Like, of course, I'll probably like walk in and fall down and cry because like, oh, Walt walked here and he walked there.
Yeah.
And just, there's that whole thing.
What is your favorite ride at Disney World or attraction?
The single best attraction at Walt Disney World is the Haunted Mansion. There's also like Carousel of Progress, which has really good, intense sentimental value for me.
Yeah.
There's Mickey's PhilharMagic. I know it is entirely whatever, like unacademic to say, but like I walk out of Mickey's PhilharMagic, a totally like corporate attraction, and I just go, Mickey's PhilharMagic is love. Like it just feels right.
Dude, I'm with you because look, multinational conglomerations have too much power, and they do, and I say that all the time. But at the same time, when it gets down to the production designer and the editor and the director and the craftsman, these are artists doing work.
So in my intense love for Disney parks, one of my primary things is I'm an old school Epcot guy.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, so I'm Epcot. I love the original, the quote-unquote, like, the 80s attractions, and I would say up through, like, 96. Because I actually like Ellen's Energy Adventure. I know many people deride it, but I love Ellen's Energy Adventure, even though it is recently closed.
I don't remember that.
Oh, so it's a ride where Ellen DeGeneres, basically, like, she falls asleep watching Jeopardy. Her neighbor is Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Sure.
And as she falls asleep watching Jeopardy, she goes onto a nightmare version of Jeopardy, where it's her against her old college roommate, Stupid Judy. Judy is a professor of energy. She knows everything. And so it's her against Judy and Professor Albert Einstein, just because.
Sure.
And so she plays through Jeopardy. In the first Jeopardy round, she gets her butt handed to her, gets creamed, and Bill Nye the Science Guy shows up, and he's like, well, it's because you don't really know anything about energy. Let me show you. We're going to go back, way back. And he takes her, like, to the beginning of time. We see the Big Bang. We go through the dinosaurs, and he goes through and explains how all different kinds of energy work. Now, of course, the problematic part of that is it was a ride funded by ExxonMobil, and so they spent an inordinate amount of time talking about fossil fuel. Well, okay, not inordinate. They spend more time talking about fossil fuels than they do the alternative resources.
Yikes.
Which is an issue. And especially since the ride opens in 96, 97.
Okay.
And so one of the lines is, but what about global warming?
Yeah.
And what does Bill Nye the Science Guy say? It's a hot topic with lots of questions.
That's Jesus. That's not what he's saying now.
No. But also then again, like 96 was like when it was kind of hipster cool to believe in global warming. I was there. My aunt worked for the EPA, so I knew about global warming and ozone. I was doing science fair projects on that way before everybody else was. But anyway, so like I'm a big old school Epcot guy.
See, we immediately come upon one of the things that I find fascinating about you. You and me are very alike, yet seem to not agree on much. No, it's true. We're both nerds, but we have our nerddom takes different sort of avenues.
Yeah.
So here's a contradiction about you that I see as a contradiction about you. You love the Walt Disney Company. You love Walt Disney as an artist, but then like you don't like the Wizard of Oz.
Okay, so I used to have a really strong thing against the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Now, truthfully, that has calmed down over the years.
Okay. Were you just being kind of an edgelord for a little while?
A little bit of that, but it's also a little bit just like... Here's the thing.
Because I have some Wizard of Oz decorative plates here.
Oh, I notice.
Yeah.
Now, I have not revisited the Wizard of Oz in years. That is part of it, too.
Okay.
But I think it's also just that overall, frankly, like... Even as a kid, like, I enjoyed the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
But, frankly, when I saw Wicked... That, to me, was so much more impactful and personal as a story that, like, I look at The Wizard of Oz and I'm like, this is literally like a child story by comparison. And I mean, and that's kind of what it is.
Yeah.
I know.
Again, you love Disney.
Like inferior, but it feels like, it's so weird. Like, it feels like inferior by comparison. Funny thing, I love Wicked, but I don't like Maleficent, which takes one of my favorite characters and basically does... The Wicked story.
Okay.
And that's why I find it trash. I'm like, Wicked does this so much better.
I tell you what, I prefer it to the live-action Beauty and the Beast and Cinderella because I feel like my gripe with those movies are they just do shot for shot of what the animated was. At least Maleficent was... We're trying something.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no, okay, fine. You get brownie points for doing that. Absolutely. I've only seen Cinderella. I've not seen Jungle Book. I haven't seen... The Beauty and the Beast, the live action.
You're not missing much.
Well, yeah, because it's just like, what's the point? It's the same. You are just doing the same thing. Maybe you're doing slight adjustments.
Right. There's a little bit of extra stuff. There's a little bit of fixing some plot holes, but really, it's not.
And also, frankly, for me, like Beauty and the Beast is a perfect movie. The original, the animated film is a perfect movie, and there's just anything else you do with it is. You're messing with perfection. You're going to screw it up. There's just no reason. You're just doing it for cold, hard cash, and it's awful.
Yeah, I agree with you. So another thing, the big reason why I wanted to have you here, other than the fact that I just wanted to talk to you, is that we were both excited / trepidatious / let's see what happens about Ready Player One, Spielberg's latest movie, hot off the tails of The Post, which I loved, but was a very grown-up movie.
Oh, yeah.
Very little Iron Giants in that movie. Much more Ben Bradley. Let me tell you something about the paper business.
We can't let the government get away with it again.
You can't let IOI do whatever they want. It's got to stop somewhere.
Come on, Meryl, we gotta stop.
Give me the one-word answer. What did you like it or not?
Yes, I liked it. I kind of loved it.
I loved it too. It's funny that you say kind of.
Well, okay, I did love it. It's just I feel bad about loving it.
Right. No, I get it. Why do you feel bad?
So I saw the movie twice last week.
I saw it 3 times.
I wish I had gotten a chance to. I almost went today. There was a.
I went this morning.
You see that? Oh, I wish you'd have called me because I would have been like, oh,
I put prep into these shows.
I'm going this morning because. So I saw it twice last week, and the first time I saw it, I was like, oh wow, that was a lot of fun. And the second time I saw it, I was like, okay, yes, no, this is still a lot of fun. This is still really good.
Right.
And I enjoyed it, I think, even more the second time. But I feel bad just because then I started reading and listening to a lot of reviews.
Right.
And all of a sudden I was like, oh, how can I be this stupid? Like, there's these plot holes, or like this is a thing, or like, oh, this is contribution to the evil Gamergate game, fan culture. Like, I just suddenly felt like really bad.
I know what you mean because I've been reading all that stuff too,
yeah.
But I've got opinions on all that stuff,
well,
and I'm sure you do too.
But, here's the thing.
First of all, let me say I think it's a better film than it was a book.
Oh my God, yes,
much better. The Artemis character is really just a manic pixie dream girl in the book, but in the movie, Spielberg makes she's the real revolutionary. She's like almost like Princess Leia. She's like, I'm going to welcome you into this. I just actually reread the book this week as well.
Okay.
So, because I wanted to reacclimate myself with it. I was surprised at how little Artemis is there. It's a lot of just him pining over her.
Okay.
Which is both creepy in the book and the movie because he barely knows her.
Yeah.
But at least in the movie, Artemis is like, she's like, I'm doing this for a reason. Like in the book, her parents aren't even dead. But in the movie, her parents are dead and she wants to make sure IOI doesn't take over the world. That alone fixes some of what's wrong with the book. Which is, like you said, some of what you see in the book and a little bit in the movie is that sort of toxic masculine fandom of Halliday was this nerdy guy and he's created this new world, so you have to study what he liked and therefore he's the arbiter of what's good. And no one mentions She-Ra or My Little Pony or Gem and the Holograms. It's all this sort of boy kind of stuff. I say boy with quotes there.
Well, actually, that's the one thing also quite funny. For anybody out there, if you're interested, there's, I want to say I think it was McSweeney's.net or something. There's a great joke piece going around that's basically somebody took Ready Player One and quote-unquote like girlified it. And so...
Wait, was that Jenny Nicholson?
Jenny Nicholson did a video on it.
Yeah.
But there's a separate... Like, somebody actually wrote, and I think it was different because it was stuff like... I jumped onto my Lisa Frank dog. I think my favorite was that like the villain was described as Sephiroth, but a wolf.
Okay.
And
right.
If you search around, I'm sure you can find it. It's hilarious.
Right.
But it does make the interesting point that the book, like you were saying, like since this is all arbitered through Halliday is looking at the world purely through a masculine perspective. He's looking at it through an 80s masculine perspective, which, especially when you look at the 80s in general, the 80s was, culturally speaking, was a backlash to the progressive movements of the 60s and 70s, a backlash to the feminist movement, especially, there's all kinds of different ways in which you can see that kind of conservative thinking.
Absolutely.
Within the 1980s and with 1980s movies and television shows.
Right. I mean... The funny thing about Ready Player One is they treat all of the 80s stuff as research for the egg hunt. So they're not very discerning, and they never think ideologically. I mean, it's the perfect definition of postmodernism where it's flat. It's all references. Nothing can go deep. He'll talk about, listening to this movie or watch, Buckaroo Banzai. He's like, I'm just like Buckaroo Banzai, and Artemis is like, that's so cool. Buckaroo Banzai is a shitty movie, and you can like it in
that movie. People love that movie.
I agree, but I think people love it in the same way that I love Legend, Ridley Scott's Legend, because I kind of love that it's 80s trash. There's none of that going on with the characters in Ready Player One. They're sort of consuming it all, but not really thinking about any of it.
The thing is that with Ready Player One, I think we have to put it in the context of you're living in a world that's coming out of several really bad situations.
Yeah.
People are just trying to get away. It sounds like it's a world where people are not necessarily creating. And as a result,
there's no new narratives,
Yeah,
it seems.
and so everything is looking backward. And since Holiday made this challenge, and this challenge all centers around the stuff that he likes, and very specifically stuff within the 80s culture. It makes sense to me that, like, okay, now this is a culture that is not just, like, reverential to the past, but there's cultural capital to it. There's a sense that, like, if I know this stuff, it means money. It means power.
That's the sort of nerd boy fantasy of all this knowledge that I've accrued. It will lead to me owning everything. It will lead to me being financially solvent and getting the girl of my dreams and being the savior. What Ernest Cline did, both brilliantly and kind of regressively, was he took the narratives of the 80s, those big sort of action narratives like Star Wars, but instead he made Star Wars where Luke Skywalker would be a fan of Star Wars. Like, what makes Luke a good Jedi is he's read every book on Jedis, and he's like he'll question you about the Jedis. But I tell you what, one thing that was reversed from the book and the movie, which is when Artemis and Parzival meet in the book, he quizzes her by making a reference to see if she gets it. Whereas in the movie, she quizzes him, which to me, that was not just better for her character, but it was better in terms of all of this junk of this toxic fandom. You know, if you're not aware, listener, about like Gamergate and all that, it's a big egg to crack, but
come take my class. I do a class on it every semester.
Basically, there is something that's been going on in fandom the last couple of years, especially in like video game, science fiction kind of fandom, where there are many men online who are thinking of themselves as gatekeepers. And if a female blogger or female fan has something to say about one of these texts, the male will claim that they are just engaging with her in critical dialogue. But what they're doing usually is shaming them, often threatening them with bodily harm, sexual violence.
Yeah.
And, you know, the alt-right in some ways is tied into the Gamergate origins.
I mean, I would argue that's sort of where it starts. This is, depending on how you feel politically, but, like, if you look at the alt-right, the beginnings of the alt-right in terms of how they have approached cultural wars or, like, you know, attacking culturally, it really does start with Gamergate.
Yeah.
And it's almost like I went through like a movie montage recently where like I'm sitting there like looking at a board and suddenly like sort of putting all the pieces together.
Like you've got the tacks and the strings.
Yeah, exactly, tacks and strings. And I'm just like, wait a minute, if you look at where Gamergate starts and the actions of Gamergate,
right,
how they function, how they think, this is the alt-right movement that we now see in a larger political context. In terms of white supremacy or in terms of neo-Nazis, these are all those people. And they're the same kinds of people.
Because something that the left, I think, doesn't talk about enough when they're talking about the alt-right is when they talk about the alt-right, they tend to just say that they're Trump voters or they tend to say they're, you know, extreme conservatives. But there's a whole element that is deeper, which is there's an irony, there's a trollingness to it. It's perfectly exemplified in the fact that Peppy the Frog became their, like, mascot. There is a sort of fandom, trolly, weird thing about them that's like, we understand culture in a way that you don't. They've been a big thorn in the side of the left because the left has always been the sarcastic ones, and the right has always been super, like, sincere, and the alt-right is sort of like, no, we're going to be snotty too, and there's a lot of layers to this onion.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's just a lot of layers to the onion, and, like, we've barely scratched the surface in this conversation. Sally, like, I just don't want to go down that rabbit hole, because we could be here for days, hours.
Let's bring it back.
Let's go back to the fun part.
So to bring it back to Ready Player One, I loved it, and well, you know what? Maybe you have similar conversations with your students. Sometimes my students will say to me in my criticism class, they'll say, "Why do you want to ruin everything?" My student will say, "I want to write about Little Mermaid," and I'll go, "I love Little Mermaid. How about we look at like gender and sexuality in Little Mermaid?" And then inevitably they're like, "Oh, you're ruining it." What I try to teach them is, you know, to use the parlance of our contemporary culture. You can be woke, but at the same time still be active in the media landscape you're in. Like, I can look at Ready Player One and go, this is candy. I just want to eat it up. I love it. I'm going to watch it a million more times. And I could also look at it and go, I don't like the way that they're dealing with race. I don't like the way they're not even really dealing with race. I don't like the way that
like they really don't deal with They kind of ignore it. Because I feel for your students, and I sort of feel the same way, and all that sure how to explain it to my own students, just ultimately essential for us to break down these media,
Right.
the different things that we see, in order to understand what are the messages coming at us, or at the very least, what are the messages that we may not necessarily realize on the surface that are
Right,
coming
they're
at
cultural
us.
artifacts,
Yeah.
and
And
criticism is an act of anthropology in a way.
In order to understand how to make our culture better, in order to understand how to better ourselves, we have to understand, like, where are these false narratives coming from, and where are these false concepts about whatever, gender,
How do we?
sexuality.
I always say to students, how do we know what we know? You know what I mean? Ideology is so important. Why do you think what you think? Where did you get it from?
Yeah.
So that's totally important, and I think we also have a right to demand better.
Yeah.
To say we want something better, you can do better than this system. But at the same time, okay, and this is me talking out of both sides of my mouth, I can look at Ready Player One and go, I'm not going to throw it out because it's not woke enough. Now, maybe because I'm a cisgendered, white, heterosexual male, it's easy for me to do that. And if that's the argument you want to make, I totally respect that. But to me, I feel like it could be both. I don't know. There's something that seems to be happening now where we throw things away. And Ready Player One definitely has problems. But I don't want to throw it away. To me, I don't think being critical and being woke is not about taking out a big rubber stamp and saying this text is irredeemable, throw it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. Again,
well, I know what you mean. Now, here would be my sort of response or argument, and this is what I'm sort of feeling when it comes to Ready Player One, and like my understanding. You sort of admitted it yourself as a cisgendered white male. It is extremely easy for me to watch this film, not be bothered by it, not think of the larger context.
Plus, Ernest Cline is a little older than us.
Yeah,
but he's speaking in our language. You know what I mean? I'm there.
Degree.
I'm getting almost every reference he's dropping, and I'm loving it. It's almost made for me. You know?
I was gonna say, I was like, there's a bunch of stuff. Like, I've never seen Buckaroo Banzai. I've never. I know there's a bunch of. I read the book about 2 years ago, so it's a little. Look, I forgot that IROC was even a character in the book.
It's really just the name. It's not at all the same character.
Yeah, no, and like there's a whole bunch of stuff that I know they changed, but like I remember like reading the book, he goes down like the thing that everybody gets and points to as like a reason why it's no good. It's I think it's the opening of chapter 2. The first like page of chapter 2 is he goes down the list of every single like television show and movie that Holiday viewed as essential, and it's just like, so I've watched Star Wolf and all that, and I'm just like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Right, and it's all this is the important knowledge, and if you don't know it, then you in this world you're not going to win the egg, but also in our fan world you're not a real fan, you're not cool. But
just real quick, just to finish off my point, just this idea, like, it's extremely easy for me to appreciate and enjoy Ready Player One, and I've come to the point where, or like I've come to the realization, and this is sort of, I'm fine with it at this point, if you're not a cisgendered straight white guy and you don't like this movie, you are absolutely valid in your reasons, and I am never ever going to try to convince you that there's some greater artwork no. Like the only thing artistically I think that I could at least ask you to like just examine is Spielberg's amazing camera movement in this movie. Spielberg, especially because you see a little bit of it in Tintin, but I feel like Tintin story-wise was almost a little too simple. Yeah. What he does.
I found it to be a snooze, to be honest with you.
I mean, I could see that, but like story-wise, I don't know. Story-wise, I thought like Tintin, it just needed a little more, but also as a character, there's just not much to Tintin. And so, like, that film is, like, sort of like him, like, trying stuff out, but he really figures it out in Ready Player One. Yeah. And the way that he moves his camera in this film is unbelievable. And the way
cuts and the movement, it's just so frenetic.
Cuts. Yeah. The fact that and I think that's the thing that so many filmmakers miss now, and I think that's what makes him so great, is that he basically says, guys, you do not need cuts. You do not need this rapid editing to create a sense of movement and forward momentum. You need to just move the camera, but also have the camera move with characters, have it be character motivated. Yeah. So there's so much I think that he does right in this film in terms of how he uses the camera.
Oh yeah. What I found impressive about it, especially coming off the heels of The Post, is it does kind of feel like a young man's film. And when we first heard that Spielberg was going to be the director of it, it gave a lot of us pause because so much of the book has references to Spielberg. So we were all kind of like, well,
And Spielberg said he didn't want to do references to his own work.
Which he kind of did anyway.
Well, like...
You've got the T-Rex.
You got the T-Rex, though. That's, like, barely... To me, I was like, okay, I can see why he felt comfortable referencing T-Rex.
Right.
But he didn't put in E.T.
No E.T., that's true. You have T-Rex, you have some of the things he produced, like Back to the Future.
Back to the Future, I know that, yeah, there was, like, Goonies references or whatever. Truthfully, I've never seen Goonies, and I just don't care at this point.
I don't like Goonies.
Oh, okay, no. Because, like, when you talk about, like, nostalgic, fanboy, things I never hear people shut up about in popular culture
right.
is, like, the Goonies was my childhood.
Right. That's what... That's one of those things that you like because you watch when you're 8.
Yeah, and then you grow up and you watch it again, and it's not as good, and it's not because... It's just, like, it's not because, I don't know, necessarily, like, you're an adult and therefore, like, you don't connect with it. It's like, no, it's just, it was bad then. You just didn't have...
Right.
The insight into what constitutes
good
filmmaking.
And if you still like it now for nostalgia's sake, fine. But I'm not gonna. You're not gonna. I saw it as an adult, and I was like, "This is not a good movie."
Just don't try to sell me a ticket to a Lega sequel,
right.
reboot of the movie, and you're gonna make 3 more of them, and you haven't even made the first one. Like, just that is what drives me cuckoo bananas.
Right. Do you think there's anyone else who could have directed Ready Player One and really did it? Because this was a movie that before it was even published, the rights were bought because they thought, oh, this is great. But then they immediately were like, well, this is actually going to be difficult to render.
Well, the obvious choice, J.J. Abrams. Like, this is literally the Abrams movie. It is.
That's true.
It's remix. It's a remix. And that's what JJ loves to do. So I almost think it would have been fascinating to see a JJ version of this movie.
That's true. That's very true.
As a remix. I don't know if I've never actually seen if he makes any films, but there's this guy who does this, he did a documentary series on YouTube and Vimeo called Everything is a Remix.
Oh, yeah, I show that in my class.
Me too. Kirby Ferguson.
Yeah.
And he's a guy I would be fascinated with if they approached him, because he understands what it is at its core that makes a remix work. And that's the thing about Ready Player One that I was sort of most fascinated by, and that I think the film only sort of gets, and even the book really only sort of gets, is how to actually do a remix, or how to do remix culture. In the reviews for this film and just in the general cultural conversation, there's a pushback against this idea of, like, why do we need filmmaking or stories where characters from these different movies or whatever are crossing continuity and telling stories with them.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea. I think there can be some really fun stories, or that you can tell that they're a little inside baseball, but, like, you can tell fun, like, is there anything wrong with the fun of seeing, like, I don't know, Indiana Jones punches out a guy at the bar and then he ducks, and then there's Harrison Ford, and then there's Han Solo and, like, shoots the other one, like, and the two of them meet and shake hands or something. Like, I don't think there's anything inherently sort of wrong with that.
The documentary you're talking about, Everything's a Remix, they say multiple times, creativity is copying and combining and transforming, right?
Yep.
What's great is we live in a digital age where almost all the information we've ever created is available to us. Mm-hmm. So because of that, you can't help but have people who are more literate in terms of everything, narrative and fantasy and media and everything. Mm-hmm. Whereas a lot of people going, oh, it's just a nostalgia fest. Oh, it's just an 80s suck-off. Oh, it's just this reference, that reference. It's so lazy. To me, I go, you're not understanding what creativity is. Mm-hmm. To me, I was actually having a conversation recently with somebody about writer's block, and I was saying I cured writer's block. I figured out the...
good. I need it.
Okay.
I'm struggling right now.
No problem. I'll give it to you right now. And folks listening at home, you can take out a pen and paper, and I'll get rid of writer's block right now. Okay, here's why you have writer's block. You've got a false idea in your head. You've got an idea in your head that you're supposed to be original, and that idea is wrong. And it's not just wrong, it's impossible, and it's not how creativity works. So go ahead and write a fanfic, or go ahead and, write your own version of something. You're not being unoriginal. Even when artists think that they're being original, they're just subconsciously copying something else, because there's only so many notes to play on the cosmic guitar, okay? This idea of, I can't think of anything. It's because you're trying to be original, and that's an impossibility, okay? The thing I always say in class is, Iron Man is Batman, and Batman is just Zorro, and Zorro is Robin Hood, and that's fine.
Yeah.
You know, this idea that we have now, that's a ripoff. You've ripped something off. That's a very, very new idea. That's how creativity works. I always say Romeo and Juliet was based on a poem called Romeo and Juliet by another 17th century.
Yeah.
And that guy didn't, we don't hear about that guy. That guy didn't sue Shakespeare. You know what I mean? That's how creativity works.
One of the really interesting things about the beginnings of something like YouTube back in the day was definitely seeing mashup trailers, ways that people started to create fan films and like have stuff cross over. I always thought that was really cool. And I think there are stories that can be told that do it. And I just think that the larger culture has sort of dictated that, no, it's just, like you said, like, no, it's unoriginal. It's
right.
It's just an empty nostalgia. Boom. Like, it's just, it's very easy to do that. And I say this like as a filmmaker. Yeah. One of the things invariably I think that's an issue with film criticism as the whole conversation starts is a lot of film critics don't make films. Mm-hmm. As a result, you have you can study all you want in a textbook, or you can watch a documentary and get a sense of what it's like to make a movie. But until you've really like poured your heart into something and like tried to make something, and you understand like the full emotional effort you put into it, that when I see critics like destroy a film, it's pathetically mean. A movie has to be truly awful and done like without thought. That has to be like so mailed in, so generic for, I think, you to sort of go off on it, even though it may not be like a great movie. Critics are creative writers, so sometimes you feel like, you're being a little bit. But that's just so snarky. Oh no, it is. But it's like, you should know. Thing to do, and like it's so easy to hide behind like your pen and pencil and just be like, like nobody. What's anybody gonna like? Nobody's actually gonna say anything to you. Yeah. Like, let's be real. No, I agree with you. I think there's a big filmmaker does say something to you, they get criticized for it. So that's that I'm a little right. No, I agree with you. I would much rather have somebody like who's actually made films and is like, dude, this is really boring and this is why. From other filmmakers, it's a lot more constructive and it feels like, oh, I see what you mean. See, where I would disagree is, I don't think you necessarily need to be an artist to be a critic, but I think that there is a big difference between real critical analysis and reviewing, because reviewing sometimes can just be like what you've been talking about, just be snarky, to me, real critical analysis is about what are the parts here and how does it deal with our culture, whether or not it has anything to do with the artist. Because even with something like, Ready Player One, the book is very problematic, but I would never say, Ernest Cline, you're problematic. I'd say you're just a dude who's living in a culture and all that problematic shit is coming through you. Well, I'm a big, like, authorship doesn't matter that much kind of critic. We're all influenced by the cultures that we grew up in. Right. And, like, that's sort of the thing. It can be hard sometimes, and I know that, like, we've all said stuff, and we've all said stuff online or whatever when trying to tackle tough issues or trying to tackle issues in our culture are pointing out like, hey, this media is problematic. We do say it, I think, usually in a way that feels very personal. That may be irresponsible on our part. We need to be more specific that, no, it is not necessarily the individual. Sometimes it is. Some people are just genuine. Zack Snyder? Oh, my God. Zacky Snyder. I feel... No, but you know what? Like, I can't even do that because I feel bad for him. What's happened in his personal life is unthinkable. Yeah, no, that kind of family tragedy would destroy me for the rest of my life, and I feel absolutely horrible. Right. But I mean, but the only thing is that when I saw Batman v Superman, forget about just problematic. That was a film that even as a filmmaker, like I was really angry about. Why? But my whole thing was because and I think this is almost a problem of toxic fandom and all this stuff. Is there was this feeling that like I'm watching this movie and I'm like, this film literally feels like Zack Snyder is sitting next to me. Every time, like, almost characters do something in the film, it's almost like an act of, hey, you know that thing you like about whatever character? Yeah. We're not going to do that anymore. Like, it just it felt like a literal attack on
I understand
my
what you mean.
ideology about
Right,
even
Superman,
just
he's
about
not-
life in general.
Yeah.
The film was this nihilistic attack on everything.
No, I completely agree. But what you just said about Batman v Superman, a lot of people, not you and I, but there are a lot of people that say that about The Last Jedi. They say it's Rian Johnson saying, fuck you, fuck Luke, everything you liked in your childhood sucks. And I don't feel that way, and I know you don't feel that way.
He kind of does say that, but he's right. Sorry, as a Last Jedi lover, but also, like, I don't know why. I do hear that argument. There's some veracity to it, because the film is kind of very anti-continuing this cycle. For me, I think the most important thing about The Last Jedi is it really does say Star Wars as a universe, as a continuing story, as something that is viable, that is living, needs to change. Not just your childhood, like, forget all that, because guys, like, your movies are still there. The original trilogy is always going to be there.
Right.
The difference is what it's saying is what you think is important in Star Wars, or what you have been trained to think is important in Star Wars, not just because of Star Wars marketing, but just frankly because of how our internet culture has evolved since the 90s.
Yeah.
This focus on hype, this focus on news, it gives a sense of importance to, like, oh, our theorizing in the years in between is some kind of essential act or act of fun. I was somebody who used to be kind of cool with hype, and I used to be more into stuff. And then I got disappointed by a lot of movies, and I just said, you know what? Like, I'm sort of done with that, and I've been enjoying movies far more since I've let go.
Me too. Famously, anyone who's been listening to PCMC knows that me and Emilio actually loved Justice League. We went in with our arms crossed going, all right, let's see this garbage. And we were both like, this is kind of cool. Is it a great movie? No. Does it make a lot of sense? Of course not. Is the villain suck? Yeah, it's terrible. But, like, Supermaning around, Batman's Batmaning. I'm enjoying myself.
I'm gonna have to. I still have to rent that. I haven't seen it yet.
Well, I could see why you didn't rush out to see it, because Batman vs Superman, and to me, Man of Steel, are really bad.
Yeah, Man of Steel was good for me for about the first 36 hours, and then all of a sudden it was like, wait a minute, that was bad.
Right.
Tricked me, Zack Snyder.
It's funny you say that. I felt that way about Watchmen for about a weekend. I was like, wow, they really did it. And then as I thought more about it, I said, no, what they did was they made a movie that really looked like the comic.
Well, yeah.
But they didn't do it. It's funny that we were just talking about how you shouldn't shit on filmmakers, and now we're talking about Zack Snyder. But I think the problem with Zack Snyder is he's good at the surface stuff. To understand the Watchmen, you have to understand Cold War ideology, and he just didn't. And it's difficult to do that during the Bush years, which is what it was.
I think what he sees is he is a 16-year-old boy. He sees cool. And I think there is a place in cinema for that. The problem is I think he needs to find better writers who can give him material that can do that. So that he doesn't make, for example, Sucker Punch. His mind is set. We're not going to change it. That's a very big adjustment you're going to be asking for an individual. Like, if you can find the right writing team to put around him, that's the thing, like, that's sort of missing from the Hollywood system in general now, is this sense of writing and producing teams who you can sort of put and give a good creative box to certain really talented individuals to help them, whatever it is about them that makes them really good, like, helps bring that out of them. So, for example, like, Michel Gondry is a filmmaker who, like, hardcore Michel Gondry fans, of course, will love everything he does, but everybody else is like, you know, it doesn't sort of work, except for something like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which is an ingenious classic film. Michel Gondry is somebody who, when he has a great writer like Charlie Kaufman there to guide him, all of a sudden he's able to go from, like, a visual perspective and do sort of what he needs. Like, he doesn't have to sort of worry about the story.
Yeah, that's the way I always felt about Tim Burton.
Yeah, no, Tim Burton's very much the same way. The Tim Burton films that I enjoy are probably, like, the better scripted Tim Burton movies. I love Ed Wood, Big Fish, which Big Fish is probably it might be his best film. And the thing about Big Fish that's fascinating is that's a film that easily could have been filled with his eccentric production design, but I don't know who it was, but somebody reeled him in on that and actually sort of made him go like, no, it's not about what, you know, your style usually is what's right for this movie.
Right.
And sort of almost makes him rise to the challenge as opposed to following a standard format.
Which is what he does a lot with his like kids movies.
Well, yeah, with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory,
Alice in Wonderland.
Everyone, I was gonna say like every film that he's done probably since Big Fish. If you put them all together, like if you looked at them all together, you could easily argue that they all take place in the same universe.
Oh yeah. It's this sort of like. I always say it's the purpley like spiral universe, like it's
with lots of what do you call them, like multicolored lines.
Right. There's a real aesthetic there. Yeah. All right, so I want to bring it back to Ready Player One.
Yeah, I agree.
What did you like about it? Let's gush on it because you know what? I saw it 3 times this week. I want to gush on it.
You mentioned it earlier. Artemis is so much better as a character in this movie than in the book. She is 10 times better. It annoyed me in the book that like basically the whole second half is her shunning him because she feels uncomfortable about how she looks.
Right.
And that annoyed the living daylights out of me. Whereas here in the movie, it's like, it's a little bit there, but it's there for like 10, 20 seconds. And then she's like, hey, we have like stuff to do. Let's go do stuff.
In the book, it's all about her insecurity about her looks. Whereas in the movie, her not wanting to like go off and be in love with him is actually more about, hey, there's a fucking war going on out there and you're not getting it. Like she says, you want to live in this illusion. So I feel like it's that thing where she's so much more, she's a political character. She's a character that like sees this shitty world as like, we need to make this better, or at least we need to make sure the Oasis is better.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. One of the main criticisms I've heard is it's like, why does she say to Parzival, you're the one who has to sort of solve this, and like leading towards that.
Right. Why does she let herself get zeroed out? Yeah.
Thing. My only argument towards that, I think it's sort of there, is it's just that like she's not interested in winning the competition. The only reason she was interested in winning the competition is for these sort of more political reasons. But ultimately,
so Sorrento wouldn't win.
Yeah, that's all. Like, yeah, she's playing so Sorrento doesn't win. Whereas like Parzival is playing to win, and I think she sees that in him. And then also just the fact that like he's probably the only guy who is nerdy enough to get it. And of course, I mean, that leads back to those problematic stuff about how nerdy, like,
right, absolutely. She's definitely better in the movie than she is in the book.
She's definitely better.
And Olivia Cooke, I think, is a really great actress.
Oh, yeah. I did not care for, okay, so I saw one of the other films she was in was Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl, which I really didn't like.
I haven't seen that. I saw Thoroughbreds, which I thought she was very good
I would love to see. I have not seen Thoroughbreds yet. I wanted to see that. But I thoroughly despise.
Really, I haven't seen or read that.
She's great in it, though. Like, I cannot deny that. Like, as a performer, she's
got a great American accent.
She's fantastic.
Better than Ben Mendelsohn's. His was a little problematic, and I love him. He is really the best part of Rogue One. I think that he's probably named after Nolan Bushnell, the founder of Atari.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure.
Stole Pong and stole a bunch of shit from other people.
I don't know about all that, but the dude cashed out early. He cashed out Atari real fast to Warner Communications and went and started Chuck E. Cheese, which, ironically enough,
I didn't know he started Chuck E.
favorite
Cheese.
Restaurant. Yeah, the Nolan
Charles Entertainment Cheese. I was not aware of that.
Yeah, no, Nolan Bushnell started Chuck E. Cheese. Like he basically took the money that he sold Atari for and went and started it.
Interesting. Yeah, that is Halliday's favorite
place to eat.
He was what's his
name?
Mark
Rylance.
Yeah. His performance is so good. And did you get a little bit of Crispin Glover? I got just the littlest Crispin Glover.
I hear people say that. I didn't necessarily think of that. What I thought was most interesting about that performance is that since there's all that stuff in the book, all that backstory that they couldn't get to, I think there's a lot of it that is intuited into Rylance's performance in how he approaches the character, and you could sort of read it off of him. Another way that the film is better than the book is in the film, it's all about his regrets in life and his feelings of love for Kira. In the book, they mention that he had a crush on Kira, but it's not the thing that's driving him. There's very little theme in the book, to be honest with you. It's a lot of just, Ernest Cline nerding out on the page, whereas I think Spielberg and the screenwriter took it and were like, there's a story in here, let's find it. Yeah, and that's the thing that I really enjoyed, too, is that they made all the challenges about Halliday as a person. Right. And I think that's the thing that's sort of getting kind of ignored. It's like the whole second challenge takes place within the movie, The Shining. Yeah. What's interesting about it is that Artemis makes the point later. She says, guys, it's a fake out. Like, that's the whole...
Right, it's not about The Shining.
It's not, like, it looks like it's supposed to be about The Shining, but it's really not. It's about him and, like, sort of... And, you know, it uses... They mention, like, some early video game that he developed and, like, all this stuff that, again, it's about him. It's about
the things the failures he had in life.
Yeah.
And then there's that great scene at the end where... You know, he quotes Groucho Marx where he says, reality is the only place you could get a decent meal.
Oh, I didn't know that was a Groucho Marx
Yeah, that's a Groucho Marx reference.
I was going to say, I was like, wow, that's really wide.
Yeah. I only know that because I believe it is a quote at the beginning of one of the chapters in the book. So they gave that to him, or I guess he's quoting Groucho Marx.
I was going to say, wait, which movie is that? I wonder which...
Oh, it could have been any. It could have been any of his...
I was going to say...
Could have been his interviews or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
You know what, since you brought it up, I got to say... My favorite thing in the movie is the Shining sequence.
I could see that.
I heard a critic call it sacrilege.
Oh, yeah.
And I get why, but I also feel like stop being pretentious because they were friends. Kubrick loved E.T., and I know it's crazy to think of him even watching E.T., but he loved E.T. They were friends. I love AI. I'm one of the people that still likes AI. And to me, what I liked about it was, other than the fact that they got it, perfect. It looks exact. I mean, the look of it is just amazing. If you're a fan of,
I was trying to figure out whether. I mean, like, I assume what they did was that they just took stills from the movie and then they must have just. Like,
well, yeah. When the blood's coming out of the elevator, that's definitely the same shot. But then it turns in the way the camera didn't turn in the movie.
Yeah.
So it's sort of digital, but it's not. Yeah, I don't know how much is recreated or how much is just the original footage.
Yeah, the woman getting out of the tub, I'm not sure.
Yeah. So much of the 80s stuff is, Spielberg was involved in. So he can't feel nostalgia for it the way Ernest Cline can. And in some ways, maybe that's good because that allows him to approach the movie as a story. Because believe it or not, I don't think that the movie's like, here's an Easter egg. A lot of it's just like you really have to look to find things.
Yeah, no, it's just sort of there. I think that's the thing.
Right.
I understand for people who didn't like the book, or like for people who felt like the book was too reference heavy. I honestly didn't feel like the movie was reference heavy enough.
It's
I felt
in
like
there.
There's stuff.
Yeah.
I actually kind of felt like the movie could have used a little more. Like we could have used a few more sort of random references in there.
Right. I loved the Shining sequence because I feel like that's him fanning out. That's Spielberg fanning out over Kubrick.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like, it's just fun. Like, you can tell, like, he really likes it. Heaven forbid, like, we feel a filmmaker, like, likes something and feel...
Right.
And feel, that's a whole different thing about Spielberg. But you know what's interesting? There was one thing I was surprised wasn't in the movie.
What?
That was in the book. In the final fight scene, Godzilla shows up.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something I'm not going to lie. Like, I was a little disappointed that he didn't show up. Like, I was kind of hoping.
Well, Mechagodzilla shows up.
Mechagodzilla shows up, but Mechagodzilla is also in the book. And
I don't remember regular Godzilla in the book.
I remember just, or maybe I...
There's definitely different things happening. It's not Gundam, it's Ultraman.
Yeah.
That's the weird thing about the movie, which is it's still reference heavy, but it's all swapped references. It's different references than the references in the book. Like, there are references to Dungeons & Dragons, and there's really none of that in the movie.
No.
The movie also doesn't stop at the 80s. The movie goes into the 90s.
Yeah, the movie goes... And that's, I think, the great thing about the movies. It goes. It goes wherever it sort of
There's
wants.
Battletoads in it.
There's which I don't really know anything about Battletoads.
All I know about it is
the Ninja Turtles show up, but of course it's the ugly new versions of the Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, it's
all right,
and then you've got the Arkham Asylum, Harley Quinn
and Joker, or was actually the Joker. It looked a little more like the Dark Knight Joker. Than it did, like sort of the Mark Hamill or the Arkham Asylum Joker.
Yeah. Other than The Shining, the reference that like tickled my ribs more than anything was the Zemeckis cube.
Yes, that was... Oh, sorry, the Zemeckis cube.
Yeah.
Which was great. I thought you said the Zemeckis cue.
Well, same thing.
Well, no, the cue, the musical cue, the Back to the Future cue.
Yeah.
That I really
It happens in that moment.
It happens a couple times.
Because it's Alan Silvestri.
Yeah. And I think that was the interesting thing. This was one of the few times where I was like... I was a little initially like unsure how I felt about, Spielberg movies without John Williams. There's only been 2 of them. Bridge of Spies, like, it was like, meh.
Mm-hmm.
Color Purple was actually really good. Quincy Jones did a great job on that. So I was like, okay, we're 50-50. And then Alvin Silvestri comes in, and I just felt like he knocked it out of the...
Right.
It almost fit better than I think a John Williams score might have fit.
Yeah, because I think he was doing something new, but also he was giving you a little taste of what he did in Back to the Future. Mm-hmm. It reminds me, actually, going back to Justice League, it's like what Danny Elfman did in Justice League. I know you haven't seen it yet, but Danny Elfman weaves in his Batman 1989 theme. And he also even brings in some John Williams Superman theme. He completely breaks with what the rest of the DC was doing, which I'm fine with. So it's a little bit like that, where Silvestri's like, this is a new thing, but I'm going to give you just a little... Yeah. It was fun. I mean, maybe it's because, I do love those movies. I love Back to the Future, and... I got to rewatch 3 because I always shit on 3, and I wonder if I'd like it more now.
3's good. I think 3's good. It just sort of does. It does what it needs to do. It just wraps things up. And I'm fine with that.
It's not really a trilogy.
Oh, see, I don't know. I think it's actually probably one of the better trilogies. I think it's one of the... When you look at trilogies in general, I would argue that it's better plotted than Star Wars.
To me, Star Wars feels like a story, at least the original 3. Whereas this is like, there's a story, you got to make your parents fall in love, and then we have a cliffhanger. I don't know. To me, it feels more like a serial than it does a 3 acts of a story.
I guess, but the thing about Star Wars is that the original trilogy, over the years, I've really lost my reverence for like how quote unquote like good the storytelling is, and mainly because of Luke and Leia being brother and sister. I think the fact that is not at all even thought about in the original Star Wars.
Right.
It's pure... The original Star Wars movie, it was purely meant that Luke and Han were going to be rivaling for the affections of Princess Leia for the rest of this serial that was going to keep going.
It's like Jedi wanted a reveal to match the reveal of Darth Vader as the father.
Yeah, exactly.
But...
And the problem is that when Lucas, Lucas likes to rewrite his own history.
Yeah.
Of course, his original intention at the end of Empire was that, Luke had a sister, but not Leia. Mm-hmm. It's this other woman who's like on the other side of the galaxy.
Right.
And that there wasn't just going to be Jedi. Like, his original intention was Star Wars was going to be a serial. It was just going to keep going.
Some people in the fandom have in their head canon say that what Yoda is referring to with "there's another" is Rey, which you can read it that way. I think if you watch them all, it's impossible because that's how time works. Clearly, no one knew who the fuck Rey was when they made Empire.
Retcon.
It's so funny that you bring up how stupid it is that she's his sister, because people were so upset about Rey not being related to anybody. How much would it have sucked if they were like, if Kylo Ren were like, Rey, your father is Maz Kanata or something, dun-dun-dun, or your father is Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's one of those things where it's one of those things like Yoda fighting with a lightsaber. You're like, ooh, cool, and then once it settles in, you're like, that's actually not cool. I wish that didn't happen. It's so much cooler that she doesn't have...
Well, I think it's that, okay, so it depends what your expectations are of Star Wars and what you've been conditioned to think of when you think of Star Wars.
Right.
For something that's supposed to be such a large universe, it's really a very small universe, and that it really involves just these characters. So I think that's part of it. And also this feeling that, like, everything you see has significance.
Mm-hmm.
Now, truthfully, I don't entirely blame them, because part of that is the hype machine that is Star Wars marketing, and that is just our general culture. But then also, the way that JJ, if you look at Episode 7, the way that he shoots and cuts and makes Force Awakens, he does give you, without ever saying it explicitly, gives you a sense that Rey must have some type of important lineage. Well, and I think that's what makes...
She sees a ship leaving. Not to be this guy, but she watches a ship leave, and that doesn't fit with her parents selling her for alcohol. Like, who's leaving on that ship?
I would argue that's it. It's that her parents, like, wanted drinking money or like, they needed to get rid of this kid.
But where are they going off planet?
They're probably not going far.
I
would imagine like they maybe, I don't know, like maybe they went on some kind of like other, like they needed money to get passage to get to like a cheap job or something. You never know. Or like, just because we always think of Star Wars like, okay, a ship goes up, that means they're going to space.
Right.
Why can't they just be like us here on Earth and like, hey, it's really far to get to like the other side of the planet.
Right.
So you just ship to get there.
Well, you're right when you say that it does seem like in The Force Awakens that she was going to be related to somebody. Yeah. I don't think it was ever going to be Luke. It was never going to be that simple.
Yeah, I didn't think
but she was going to be related somehow. I always thought, before Last Jedi, I thought she was a clone. The vision she has in The Last Jedi of her doubled and tripled, to me, that makes me feel like maybe my theory can still pan out. I mean, clearly what's happened, and we know this from the behind-the-scene bullshit, is that JJ did want her to be somebody, and Rian Johnson didn't. And instead of making a real trilogy, they've been making this new trilogy like a baton race, where one guy goes and then the next guy gets the baton, and now you go, and all of this has to happen because we want to make all three at the exact same time, so we can't even have it all thought out. That's the thing. I think, I like Force Awakens and I love Last Jedi, but I think when we do look back, we're going to see them as like, these movies don't really flow. There's clearly not a plan here.
I see what you mean, but also by that same token, I've thought about it. I do not want what others have suggested, which is there's basically like a Star Wars brain trust, like a Dave Filoni at the top or whoever, like that there's somebody who plotted out 3 stories and that this is what, and we're going to bring in a director to just do that.
But what if that were JJ?
It doesn't matter. I don't like the Marvelization of movies. I don't like this idea that like a filmmaker like Rian Johnson couldn't come in, do his own thing. Because frankly, like I think if there was another plan, and it was that Rey had this other parentage and Rian Johnson was just directing it, this film would not be as good as Rian coming up with what he came up with and making that film.
Yeah.
But also that does require an extraordinary amount of talent to do. When Kathleen Kennedy was first hired at Lucasfilm, and then especially when Lucasfilm got bought by Disney, I was psyched. Bob Iger was supposed to have retired like 3 times by this point. He was supposed to, but they keep extending his contract with Disney because of his acquisitions and wanting to see things through. And now, especially with 20th Century Fox, like he's going to be.
I will own all the IP.
But anyway, I was like, okay, so he's gonna leave at some point, and I didn't want at the time like the 2 suits or the 2 guys who were like in line to take over, Jay Rizzullo and I can't remember who the other guy was. Both of them were very much your traditional Disney suits, and what I saw when Kathleen Kennedy came in as being acquired through Lucasfilm because she was still the president, I was like, it would be great if she was the one who rose to become CEO. Because I was like, she's a winner. She knows talent.
From getting Spielberg's coffee to running Lucasfilm.
Yeah. Well, but that's the thing is, like, she worked with Spielberg. She knows good filmmakers and good filmmaking practices. She's somebody who hasn't made a lot of flops.
The M. Night Shyamalan movies that are good, she worked on.
So, I mean, I guess that was the first 3.
First 2, I think, or first 2.
Was it just the Touchstone ones?
I'm not sure. I just know him without her is not good.
Yeah, I could see that. Because, but
she's good.
But here is my thing, though. I felt that way until about the last year or so, between the fact that she basically hired 3 directors for 3 different movies.
Right.
And by the end of it, had fired them all. So between what's his face on Rogue One.
Oh, right.
Between
that was completely reshot.
Phil Lord and Chris Miller throwing them off 2 weeks before the end of production.
Yeah.
Like, as a filmmaker, like I don't understand. That is something I do not understand. Like when you're that far in.
Yeah.
Just let them finish the 2 weeks. You know you're going to do reshoots. Like to me, it was almost like more embarrassing that and it's more hurtful to, frankly, like their like it's a whole thing. So I was shocked by that. That seemed almost like a rookie move.
And then Trevorrow.
And then Trevorrow made sense because, frankly, like that dude had so much bad heat coming off of the fact that a bunch
Book
of
of
people,
Henry.
Well, between Book of Henry and the fact that everybody started waking up to Jurassic World and being like, oh, that was bad.
I hated it from the get-go.
I remember seeing it in like the first night, feeling like it was kind of cool, but then that was it. It was the first night, and then the next morning I was like, "Oh, that wasn't good.
Yeah,
that was really bad."
Yeah.
How did they trick me?
I don't know. It's the dinosaurs.
Also, quite frankly, we need more movies with dinosaurs. I just want that out in the ether. Like,
Yeah.
it seems ridiculous to me that the only movies that are allowed to have dinosaurs in them are Jurassic Park related movies. Like,
I agree.
dinosaurs are free. Like, do movies with them, people. Like,
Yeah.
I gotta be honest, half the reason Jurassic World succeeded is just because, like, we all like seeing dinosaurs.
Yeah, it's true.
It's the only place we see them.
The Peter Jackson King Kong has some dinosaurs
I
in
liked,
it.
and I actually like that movie. I know that movie has
I liked
issues
it.
and it's a little long, but like, I do like the King. I like the Peter Jackson King Kong.
You know what I loved Kong Island.
I didn't see that.
It was, again, it was maybe a younger me would have been like, I don't like this and that, but me now was just like, that was a fun time at the movies. There was a giant ape, and I had a good time with that. You know, I think when you're younger and you're building your taste, you know, part of that process is like being like, I don't like this and I don't like that, and picking things apart. But I think the older I get, the more I kind of just like, I like things. I'm just like, yeah, I had a good time with this. Some things are candy, some things are steak dinners.
And thank you, because this is the thing that I feel like is missing. I mean, I know that the internet completely misses the idea of nuance in general, but even film criticism and even the way that we just talk about movies, I feel like a lot of people miss out on this idea of like, there's almost this feeling that like, no, every movie has the potential to be perfect and be great or important,
whatever that means.
No, forget about the arbitrary nature of all that and how that changes based on culture,
Right.
But just this feeling that like, you know, it's okay to have movies that are like 2-star movies and 3-star movies and 4-star. It's movies that aren't great necessarily that help us show the ones that are really
Right.
good. Like, I don't know how else to explain it, but like, we need all kinds of films out there,
Right.
and just because like a movie isn't great, it doesn't mean that it's a complete failure or that like it's something bad or that it's something that needs to be shunned.
I don't get critics who compare every movie as if every movie's doing the same thing. To me, when I think about if I want to put a value judgment on a movie, which I don't always want to, but if I do want to put a value judgment on a movie, I think, what is this movie trying to do? Did it do that? Did it fall short of that? And then I'll also think about, well, do I like what it was attempting to do? But this idea of like, there's this such thing as a great movie in your head, and you are comparing what you've seen to that thing in your head. It's like, Ready Player One's never going to be a great movie because it's a movie that has Battletoads in it. But whatever it's trying to do, I think it did really well. Thank you for being here.
No problem.
Remember, Pop Culture Man Children, PCMC, available on Stitcher and iTunes. Please rate and review and share, and follow Pop Culture Man Children on Instagram. At Emilio Sparks is on Twitter. You can always slide into his DMs with I don't know, whatever you want to send him. You know, that's his business. I don't care about it. All right.
Hey, Emilio, you looking real nasty.
Go bye-bye.